that we had on a couple weeks ago, I believe.
Yeah. And you know what? Nothing against him. I mean, I don't know him. I didn't look at his case files, whatever they are. I looked at the original case files from 10 years ago and literally thousands and thousands of pages of documents. But I don't understand why he would spend so much time running Russell Poole's name down. I mean, I think that's just bad taste. And I don't have anything bad to say about Greg. I just don't think he's right about this, and I think he's a paid pundit for LAPD.
Yeah, hold on one second there, Michael. Heck of an interview. Those of you listening, tune in, call in, 714-409-0548. We have a caller right now. I'm going to bring our caller on the line. You're on the line right now with author Michael Douglas Carlin. May I ask who's calling, please? Hello. Oh, call dropped. Maybe you call back in. Hit the line, 714-409-0548. Very, very interesting show. But, yeah, we were just talking about Greg Kading's investigative theory about the homicide, and you think that his theory is biased for the LAPD. Here's our caller again. You're on the line with Michael Douglas Carlin. Welcome to the Murder Master Music Show.
Yeah, how are you? This is actually Greg Kading. I'm calling in. I would like to have a conversation about this. If I'm a paid pundit for the LAPD, I'd like to see or hear where the evidence is for such a remark or such a claim.
You know, most people, do you mind if I answer this? Most people that are caught in reckless disregard for the truth are fired. All of their cases are overturned, and they're stripped of their pension. And somehow you manage to keep your pension. I'd say that's being paid.
Well, then why don't we talk about the details of what this reckless disregard for the truth claim actually was? Why don't you tell me about the details about how reckless this really was? It was a mistake on a search warrant in which a federal judge says, Greg, you had a recording, you misquoted something, and therefore that was reckless disregard. However, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm not saying you've done anything malicious or intentional. I'm just saying you didn't do as good a job as you probably should have. That's completely different than the picture you're trying to paint. And that is why I have my pension. That's why I'm decorated. That's why I still testify in federal and state court, is because it's not the picture that you are hoping to paint.
I have the document, and the document says it's a sitting judge that reprimands you for reckless disregard of the truth. I don't know what that means.
Well, then you should learn what it means, Michael, because the judge immediately says, I'm not saying he's lying because that's something entirely different. So if you're going to present the picture, don't take the selective information that works towards your theory. Paint the whole picture, because the judge said in court, I am not saying that he's done anything malicious or intentional. I'm just saying he didn't do a good enough job on this particular issue.
That's not what the document says.
Yes, it is, Michael. You know that's exactly what it says.
No, I'll tell you what. I'll post that document. No problem.
Well, please do. Post all 75 pages of it.
Okay. I'll post the pages I have.
Okay, so now that you've now beyond that one issue, within the Tupac or the Biggie case, because that's a completely unrelated case, as you know. So within this Biggie case, how is it that I'm somehow covering up for the LAPD while I'm simultaneously criticizing the LAPD?
Well, how many times have you said that cops never worked for Death Row Records?
I never said that. I've never said that cops never worked for Death Row Records. What I said is that LAPD cops have been generalized as being death row employees, and that's not true. There were cops working for death row records, Inglewood PD, Compton PD, 1 or 2 LAPD officers, but not the picture you guys try to paint where there's all of these, in particular, David Mack, who never had any association with death row records, and that's the picture that you guys trying to paint.
All of those guys had association with death row records.
Why don't you tell me exactly how David Mack was associated with death row records?
All of those guys were. They showed up at everything, and they worked.
Name one thing. Name one thing and one employee who testified to seeing them there.
Let's see, Kevin Hackey.
Kevin
lots
Hackey,
of them.
That's going to be your source. So out of all the cops that we can possibly identify associated with death row records, nobody's dirtier than Kevin Hackey. He's the only 3-time convicted felon, the person who lost his job for forgery, and that's your source about other dirty cops?
I'll tell you the other sources I have, and I have multiple sources for all of this stuff. Let's go right now and let's talk to any salty dog in Beverly Hills PD. They met them all.
Beverly Hills PD has what to do with anything?
They pulled these guys over. They met Perez. They met Mack. They met Kevin Gaines. They got badges flashed from LAPD. They didn't appreciate it. They didn't like all the drama that Death Row Records brought to Beverly Hills. They're very credible sources.
And this equates to murder somehow for you, right?
Well,
because some cops are acting inappropriate, because some cops flash a badge out the window, because some other cops don't like the way they're conducting their business, somehow you draw a line from that to murder?
I think there's an awful lot of dotted lines that connect here, and I think you know that.
No, what is the problem, Mike, is that there's no dotted lines that connect anybody to your ultimate claim that these guys were involved in the murder of Biggie Smalls. Whatsoever. Nor Tupac Shakur.
There's lots of eyewitnesses, absolutely. See, this is what you forget. I have all these documents. I have thousands and thousands of pages of documents.
Okay.
Once you read Chaos Merchants, it's all documented.
Listen, Michael,
it's all sourced. It's all
you're preaching to the choir, brother. You don't have anything that I don't have, and I have 10 times more than you have. I was the case investigator. I ran this investigation, which means I had all the previous investigative material. I mean, for you to try to claim that you're in a position, for you to try to claim that you're somehow in a position of advantage from an intelligence standpoint is insane. You're an outsider trying to look in. I'm an insider telling you what took place.
You're an insider that took the case 10 years after Russell Poole had it, and all of the documents that Russell Poole made photocopies of were purged from the murder books before you ever even got the case.
Michael, you're absolutely crazy. Oh, so somebody came in and took all these documents. There's a bunch of missing documents that we don't know about. Are you absolutely insane? Do you know how much oversight was? Do you know how much oversight was on these cases?
Yeah, and when it kept leading back to corrupt cops, Russell kept being told to stand down. Like Kevin Gaines.
Like Kevin Gaines.
You know?
So Kevin Gaines, let's just say he's a corrupt cop. What does that have to do with the murder of Biggie Smalls? Yes, there's corrupt cops in law enforcement. Nobody argues that. But you take these huge leaps from saying, well, because he's a corrupt cop, he must have done this other thing. And that's where you guys fail so miserably, because you cannot connect these dots in any way, shape, or form. And at the same time, you malign innocent people in that process. You don't know anything about Reggie Wright Jr. or your new claim of Sharitha Knight having something to do with it and your whole half-dead theory. You guys are so off your rockers with your logic and with your lack of evidence that it's unfair to those people that you are falsely accusing.
And you are on their side. You're buddies with all of them. and you're protecting them. And why
You're
can't
right.
there just be
You're
an investigation?
absolutely right. There
Why
is
can't
an
there just be an
investigation. There has been an investigation. Listen, you want to talk about investigations, Mike? Let's talk about your investigation. Have you interviewed Little Half Dead? Have you interviewed Malcolm Patton? Have you interviewed Danny Patton? Have you interviewed Sharitha or Reggie? Have you interviewed any of the people involved? Have you interviewed Robert Sri, his family, his sisters, his brothers, his dad? Have you interviewed the molestation victim that actually wrote that letter? The 14-year-old girl that was being molested that wrote that confession letter that you base your theory on? Did you interview her? Because I've interviewed every single one of those people. You had no due diligence. I did all of your due diligence.
You are not a cop, and it is not your place to interview those people. They should have been interviewed.
Don't tell me what my place is. I can do whatever I please. If I want to go out and ask questions because I'm interested in solving these cases, don't tell me that it's not my place.
You're not interested in solving these cases. You're interested in derailing these cases, and you've done a very good job of it. And I have to say, you're the source. Stop. You are the source of the leak of the confession letter. It was given to you by Darren Dupree, and you leaked it from LAPD instead of letting LAPD investigate it. That's not
so
really,
somehow,
that's
let me ask you something.
Justice.
How does me leaking a letter preclude the LAPD, or more importantly, the Las Vegas PD, from conducting an investigation? Because let's say there's a letter put out. How does that prevent them from doing their job, Mike?
It warns everybody that's associated with this to make phone calls and get all their stories straight before any investigation can be done. It derails the investigation. Precious opportunity was lost because of your actions, because of your obstruction of justice. Hey, Greg, where were you the night Tupac Shakur was murdered?
I have absolutely no idea. I know I wasn't in Vegas. Oh, give me a break, Michael. See, this is how insane you are. This is absolutely how crazy
I'm just
you
wondering.
Are.
I'm just wondering.
As if what? This is 1996. I was so.
What were you doing in '96?
What were you doing in 1996? Were you in Las Vegas? Is this all some type of cover-up?
I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Great. Well, I was probably in Los Angeles because that's where I worked.
And what were you doing at the time?
Wait a second. Are we really going to get into, what were you doing the night of Tupac Shakur's murder?
No, I'm just asking generally. What was your job responsibility at the time Tupac was, that time period? I'm just curious.
Cop.
What were you... Yeah, cop doing what? What were you working on?
In 1996, let's see, I was probably working gang crimes in Los Angeles.
And did you work with the Compton police?
Not directly, ever. I never even met Tim Brennan. I've never met Ladd in my life, but I never met Tim Brennan until after 2006 when I was assigned to the task force. I mean, this is just this incredible fantasy that you try to blend all of these things together. I mean, even to allude to the idea that in 1996 I was somehow connected to the investigation of Tupac Shakur is absolutely asinine.
Really?
Oh, well, absolutely, Michael. And this is the problem with you. You know, you draw these far-fetched notions out of nowhere. Greg, what were you doing in 1996? As if that's even a relevant question, because I had nothing to do with the investigation until 2006, and those are the hard facts. I didn't even get invited to...
Don't you think it's a little thin of you to, try and blame this on Sean Puffy Combs when there's really no proof that Sean Puffy Combs had anything to do with this? I mean, don't you think that's irresponsible?
So you conducted an investigation into Sean Combs and his involvement? You conducted an investigation into his association with the Southside Crips. You did all of this, Mike?
Did
you actually go out? Did you? What Southside Crips did you interview? What Crips did you interview? What bad boy personnel did you interview that said any of this wasn't true? I want to know what investigation you did in order to qualify you into telling me how things played out.
You can read about it in Chaos Merchants. Everything is documented.
No, I don't need to read your book, Mike, and don't defer to that. I'm asking you a question. I want to know about your investigation or the lack thereof, because you're telling me what happened.
And by the way, Greg, it's not just my investigation. It's a 19-and-a-half-year homicide veteran of the LAPD's investigation, and I just happen to be the writer.
Who never investigated in any way, shape, or form Tupac Shakur's murder, and he was only assigned to the Biggie Smalls investigation for less than a year before he was removed from the investigation for misconduct, and then he went off, got pissed off, and wrote a book. So don't tell me about this 19-year investigation. He was already removed from the department. So,
no, he was 19-and-a-half years with the LAPD. You don't listen. He was 19-and-a-half years with the LAPD. He was a decorated homicide investigator, and you, my friend, have made a big mistake by trying to sully his reputation. All of the other cops that knew him were extremely proud of all of the work he did there, and all of the people that he introduced.
Is that right? Well, then why did the LAPD issue a press release saying that they were distancing themselves from him because nobody agreed?
He sued them.
Nonetheless, you just got done claiming that everybody supported him.
The cops do, the investigators do, the DAs do. All the cases that they got, they never had any surprises in the cases that he brought to them. He always told them the good, the bad, and the ugly. There were never any reckless witness statements or any of that kind of stuff in his cases. He never pointed a gun at an infant. He never robbed
Give me
a storage locker.
See, this is what you do, Mike. You throw out these incendiary type of comments. You never pointed a gun at an infant. And who did?
Well, Greg, you tell me.
Who did?
I mean,
I don't know.
got a document. I got a document sent to me that said you did.
You got a document sent to you that I did, and so that must be true because somebody sent you a document, and because it's on a piece of paper, therefore it's true.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Well, you see, that's the thing. You don't know. You don't know, but you'll throw that claim out there. See, this is the problem,
But Greg, there's no claims like this against Russell Poole. And you know what? It doesn't matter what I think.
Why was Russell Poole removed from the task force, Mike? Of course there's claims. An investigation was done on him for misconduct. He was removed from it, and those are just the facts. Now, listen, I'm not saying Russell Poole is a bad guy. I'm not saying he's a malicious guy. I'm saying he failed in being objective on this one particular case. Maybe he did a great job on everything else he did. I didn't know Russell Poole, and maybe he has a lot of friends on the department that support him. That's great. I'm simply saying that on this particular case, he lost his objectivity and he fell short with his theory. That's it. It's not a personal affront. It's not a personal attack. It's just a pure objective comment about his investigation. So I'm not maligning him. I'm saying that the work he did in this particular case didn't meet the standards of an objective investigation. It's just that simple.
So I'm going to read to you what Russell Poole wrote about Murder Rap and about you. Greg
this is interesting. So this is interesting, Mike, that you criticize me.
You're going to let me read this? Are you going to let me read this?
I will.
Let me read
First of all, listen.
Are you going to let me read this?
I will, Michael.
Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me.
Okay.
Are you going to let me read this? Let me read this.
Read it.
Greg Kading has no credibility on this subject matter. He became a task force member on the Biggie case 10 years after the fact. Kading left the LAPD in disgrace for his false testimony on a federal murder and racketeering case United States versus George Toros Ramos, CR 06-656A SVW. Guilty verdicts were overturned in part due to Kading's testimony. He said LAPD cleared him of those charges, but that is not entirely true. Kading also had some help writing his book from disgraced LA Times reporter Chuck Phillips. Kading forgets there were actual eyewitnesses to the Biggie killing. He spends a lot of time talking about things he knows nothing about. This is a desperate attempt for Kading to salvage his reputation. Suge Knight is a suspect, but not for the reasons Kading talks about. In closing, Kading never attempted to interview me regarding the Biggie investigation. He makes a lot of false statements about me and my part in the investigation. Retired LAPD homicide detective Russell Poole.
That's interesting, Mike. That's really interesting. Those are Russell Poole's perspective. But you just got done saying, hey, Greg, how dare you malign this guy, Russell Poole, but yet at the same time you can say it's it's completely acceptable that Russell Poole will malign you. And because he said it, it must be true. And this is where you lose your objectivity. So Russell Poole has these feelings or these perspectives, which are all untrue, factually untrue, but nonetheless, because he puts that as a review on my book, you assume that, well, if Russell Poole said it, then it must be true. And that, this is just, it's an unfair and unobjective way of approaching your case, Mike.
Well, the objective way that I approached this case was with Russell Poole's case files, all of the Wallace civil trial files, all of the Frank Alexander secret tape recordings, and various other documents and interviews, including the FBI FOIA released documents.
Okay,
and
fine.
It all paints a pretty big picture.
It certainly does if you want it to paint a particular picture. You can take the selective information you want from that whole, plethora of material and then say, here's my conspiracy theory and here's the pieces that match up. But what you don't do and where you guys fail is that you don't also include all the information that compromises that theory. Now, everything that you just suggested that you have, I have. Our entire task force had all of the investigative material plus at least that much more, because Russ Poole never had the information which took place in the investigation after he left, which I have access to.
You have all of Frank Alexander's secret tape recordings too?
I have all of his police recordings, and I am aware of the tape recordings that you're referring to where he is speaking of these so-called threats from death row against with Reggie Wright. So big deal. What does that have to do with the murder, Mike?
Well, why is his life in danger? Why are all the witnesses dead? I mean, why do people just die? They become close to this case.
Well, I don't know. How about the fact?
As simple as you said it is.
How about the fact? Hey, Mike. How about the fact that 20 years have gone by? Life takes its course. People die all over the place, whether it's health problems like Russell Poole, or whether it's suicide like Frank Alexander, or whether it's a drug overdose like Michael Moore. Life takes its course. All these gang members are dead because they lived a life of gang members, so gang members naturally die. So when you look at this thing and you recognize people's lifestyles, death is a natural course of that. But for you to say, well, all these people are dead, it must be this huge conspiracy wherein they're too close to the truth, we've got to knock them out. It's preposterous. It's absolutely
an eyewitness
insane.
to the shooting gets gunned down in New Jersey, and that's preposterous. And
yes,
that's days
because
after.
so now the New Jersey investigation, that's all part of the conspiracy, right? Because those New Jersey investigators that figured out what actually happened, that it was an unrelated thing, they're covering up now, right?
Well, no, there's an FBI
how big does
investigation.
How big does this conspiracy go for you, Mike? I mean, how big does it go? Does every single tentacle where something happens, that's part of the conspiracy? I mean, based on what you say, there must be thousands of people involved in this.
It should all be looked at, and
it has all been looked at.
No, it has
all been looked at. You don't think that the murder of Yafu Fuller was looked at closely to see if it was related? Of course it was. People wanted to know. Investigators wanted to know. But when the facts of the case determined that it wasn't related, then you just have to accept that. You don't say, well, disregard the investigation now because that's part of the cover-up, because it's not related. So because it's not related, it's got to be part of the conspiracy. And this is the insanity. This is the insanity of what you guys do. Is that you just pull in everything as part of this grand conspiracy with no facts or evidence to support it.
And the FBI
I take it you guys are not going to send each other Christmas cards this year.
I'll send Mike a Christmas card. But I mean, I'm just, you know, it's difficult to sit back and watch about how these guys like Mike, you know, put together these grand conspiracies and start to put, you know, everybody's involved and start maligning and throwing factually innocent people under the bus. You know, these people have lives and families and kids, and to speculate that they're involved in a murder and then publicly accuse them of it, it's so reckless and irresponsible that that's why I'm passionate about it.
Hey, Greg, let me just make one point. You were the one that released the names by releasing the confession letter. We weren't going to release names, and you were the one that put all of those lives in danger by releasing.
Oh, did I? Because I actually had interviewed and talked to every single one of those people. I went out and talked to Reggie. I talked to Shretha. I talked to Malcolm. I talked to Danny. I talked to Valerie. I spoke to them all.
Letter.
And guess what they wanted me to do? They wanted me to publicly defend them. They've asked me to represent them, because they don't appreciate the fact of what you guys have done. And so I don't have a problem. I didn't put anybody in danger. How can you put people in danger when you've got their cooperation? They want me to do this, Mike, because they don't appreciate these false allegations that you guys are posing based on a confession letter by a child molesting schizophrenic written by a 14-year-old child molestation victim. And that's the basis of your theory that you're going to accuse these people on. They deserve to be represented. And so if I publicly go out and represent them and I name names, they appreciate that.
This letter was given to journalist Chris Blanchford, and he spoke to both Malcolm and Danny Patton and confirmed all of this with them. So
okay, first of all, no, he didn't. He never spoke to Malcolm Patton because Malcolm Patton, Danny Patton did go, in fact, and meet with him, but they didn't discuss anything about the murder. As a matter of fact, Danny Patton was coaxed into that meeting because Robert Soria told Danny, "Hey, come, give me a break. Stop lying. Let me ask you this: Why did Chris Blatchford bury that letter for 10 years, Mike? What kind of investigative journalist gets a letter as salacious as who's involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur, and then he buries it in a drawer for, 15 years? Give me a break.
He buried it.
I mean, that's how ridiculous this is that, it was buried, and you know damn well it was buried. He didn't give it to Russell Poole until 2013. So this phenomenal investigative reporter takes a clue in a very high-profile murder, and he sticks it in a drawer for 15 years and then gives it to some retired detective to run with. And that's the basis of this? And he never even tells you, does he, who Robert Soria was. He doesn't say, hey, my source is a guy who's in prison right now for child molestation, because he doesn't want you to know that. Because once that's discovered, the whole credibility of the letter falls apart. So we're the ones who figured out who Robert Soria was. We're the ones who figured out who he was, who the source of the letter was, who wrote it, and who all was involved. We went out and interviewed every single one of them. Most of them don't even know each other. And the theory becomes so preposterous that a man who would claim to be intelligent like yourself has to have lost his marbles in order to promote this idea.
Sir, are you saying that Chris Blanchford is not a credible journalist?
I'm not saying that, and I never said that. I said on this particular matter, it's very obvious why Chris Blatchford didn't want to compromise his credibility by pursuing such a preposterous claim, which is why he did nothing with the letter.
Chris Blatchford tried to pursue this in a couple of ways, and he basically got hit with law enforcement that absolutely wanted nothing to do with solving these murders.
Oh, really? So he gave the letter to law enforcement?
He tried to.
When did he try to? Because I have the Las Vegas documents where they tried multiple times to contact Chris Blatchford about this lead, and he would never cooperate or return their call. All Chris Blatchford had to do was turn over the letter. You think the cops are going to say, no, thanks, we don't want your letter? Give me a break.
That's what they told him. They told him they weren't interested.
Give me a break. He will never go on record saying that, and you know that damn well. Chris Blatchford wants nothing to do with this because he knows that it'll only damage his reputation. It's such a ridiculous claim.
He's retired. He's retired. He doesn't pursue this stuff anymore. And you're right. He wants nothing to do with it. He thinks it's dangerous to be involved in this.
Give me a break. See, this is how you insane conspiracy. Everything's dangerous. If we get involved, it's dangerous. We're all going to die if we start talking about this. This is the insanity of your guys' position. Yeah. So it really is, Mike. I mean, you've got to get a grip at some point. Really
so, Greg, let's go back to the Yakafula thing. The FBI documents on the Yakafula thing call this an execution, and they tie it directly to the death row records. Death row records. These are the FBI documents. These FBI documents
that you're speaking of, Michael, that allegedly say this, well, then why didn't they pursue anything? Is the FBI now part of this big conspiracy? Is it the LAPD, the Las Vegas Police Department, New Jersey Police Department? Are we all collaborating and say, how are we going to somehow cover up for death row while we simultaneously spend millions of dollars investigating death row? I mean, it's such a hypocritical position to make these claims because logically you can't connect the dots. Everybody in the world must be involved in this conspiracy from your guys' position.
Nobody's saying that, oh, yeah, it's the FBI, it's the CIA, nobody's saying that.
Yes, you are. You just got done saying how the FBI became aware that Yakafula's murder was somehow connected to death row. You're the one who just said that.
It's
not documented. Hey, Michael, see, this is where you lose perspective because you're not a cop. You don't have an understanding that just because something's written on an FBI document doesn't mean the claim's true. If I go and interview somebody and it's written on an FBI document, and this particular person says, hey, I saw so-and-so shoot so-and-so, it doesn't mean that it's true just because somebody's making a claim and it's on a piece of paper.
I'll post the document.
That's the thing. You can post the document. I have documents that say that Oprah Winfrey was involved in Biggie Smalls' murder. I have documents that say that Jay-Z was involved in Tupac Shakur's murder. I have documents that say Tupac Shakur killed Biggie Smalls. And these are on official government documents, because we record information as it's being reported to us. But it doesn't make the claims true. That because you read it on an official document to you, well, goddamn, it's true.
Have you seen
all the documents
of his murder? Hold on, Greg. Back up. You said, you have a document of Oprah and whose murder?
On an official document, somebody called in during America's Most Wanted, and the police were manning the line. And somebody called in and said, hey, Oprah killed. So now it's on an official document. It's part of the investigative material because somebody called in and made this claim. So it's written. Caller claims Oprah Winfrey killed Biggie Smalls. So it's just these insane people calling from insane asylums. Who knows? But it's part of the official police case files. It's an official document.
Okay. When you said you had a document, what the fuck? Okay.
The book Chaos Merchants is written by Russell Poole and me, and Russell Poole was the lead investigator who solved the Ennis Cosby case.
Let's patch these together. But they don't do any due diligence to see if what's written down is actually true. And this is what is so reckless about their approach to everything.
Well, this book, Chaos Merchants, every single source is cited. And this book was written by Russell Poole, NB. Russell Poole is the lead investigator who solved the Ennis Cosby case. He worked on over 500 homicides, 300 of them which he headed up. This isn't
Russell Poole is probably a saint in your book, and that's fine. Nobody's taking anything away from what he's done in his career. It doesn't mean that he didn't make some mistakes. We've all made some mistakes. I've made mistakes. He made mistakes in this case. So for you to just say, because Russell Poole has done so many good things, his claims here, therefore must be true. It's poor logic. He made mistakes. There is nothing connecting David Mack to the murder of Biggie Smalls. There's nothing connecting Suge Knight to the murder of Tupac Shakur. There's nothing connecting Malcolm Patton or Danny Patton or Sharitha Knight or Reggie Wright Jr. to the murder of Tupac Shakur. They're just speculative, illusional ideas that you throw out there without understanding the consequences of.
We completely disagree.
Have you ever been accused of murder?
No, I've never been accused of murder. David Mack.
Okay, how would you like it if somebody was out there accusing Michael Carlin of murder with no basis? Just speculation, innuendo, hearsay, and maybe some report where somebody called in and said Michael Carlin murdered Tupac Shakur. How would you like somebody out there published?
We're talking about David Mack, who went into a Bank of America with guns.
He's a crook. Nobody argues that. Does that mean he's a murderer?
And he stole $700,000. And when other investigations started coming in, and they tried to cap it off. So I'll tell you what we'll do, David. You get to keep the money. You just do a stint, and you don't ever have to tell who you were or your accomplices were. You know, all you have to do is just do a little bit of time.
Oh, so the
money.
So the FBI who's conducting the bank robbery investigation, they say, hey, listen, we're good with you keeping the stolen money, no problem, but we're going to send you to prison and you need to keep quiet about who you were involved with the Biggie murder, because that's what we really need to do. We're the FBI, and we need to make sure nobody ever knows about the corruption in LAPD, because we're going to protect them too. As a matter of fact, let's do the same thing in New Jersey, and let's do the same thing in Las Vegas. I mean, it's just so asinine how you pull these ideas together. That the FBI, the Las Vegas Police Department, the LAPD, the United States Attorney's Office, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, everybody's in collusion together. Because Biggie Smalls' murder and Tupac Shakur's murder was such a threat to the government that we must cover this up. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
You don't think the Rampart scandal was bigger than what ended up in the Rampart report? I mean,
I don't know, Mike.
It is because you were there.
According to the conspiracy theory, it must have gone all the way to the president. It had to have. It must have gone all the way to the president.
You know what, Greg? You are just disingenuous about this stuff. Nobody's accusing Barack Obama
I'm extremely genuine. Well, no, this is what you do, though. You're saying, well, it had to be bigger, even though the official investigation is that it wasn't bigger. An outsider like you who disagrees is going to come to this conclusion, well, law enforcement said it wasn't bigger, but saying it is.
But this isn't my conclusion, Greg.
Whose
is
it?
This is Russell Poole's conclusion.
Oh, so this is all based on, so we're going to go back to Russell Poole. Because Russell Poole said it, it must be true, right? Because
I believe Russell Poole had a very good handle cases, and he continued to investigate this to his dying breath.
Mike. Hey, Mike, if he had such a good handle on these cases.
Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. Stop being disrespectful.
Mike, if he had such a good handle on these cases, why did he change his theory?
You stop interrupting me. Okay? I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to let you bully me. I don't like bullies. Stop it. Okay,
Mike,
you want to have a conversation? No questions. You want to have a conversation?
Let me just ask you one last question. I'll ask one last question. Mike, if he had such a handle on things, why did he change his theory?
Well, let's
why
talk about
after
that.
10 years, after 10 years did he change his theory if he had such a good handle on it?
So what ends up happening with Russell Poole is he always saw Suge Knight and Death Row Records as one and the same. And when all of this evidence started pointing to Death Row Records' involvement in both of these murders, he believed that Suge Knight was part of this. And if you look at the documents that get leaked by the sheriffs, the one document that gets leaked is Snoop telling sheriff's investigators that Suge was behind the murder of Tupac. And Russell took that and ran with it. And years later, when all of these files get re-examined by Russell, he realizes that Suge had absolutely nothing to do with either of these murders, and he wants to go set things right with Suge Knight, and that's why he was going down to the sheriff's meeting where he died.
Okay, so he changes his theory because at first he believes that there's this leaked document with Snoop Dogg saying, well, of course that's not a leaked document because Snoop Dogg said that publicly. So I don't know how that becomes a leaked document where you have Snoop saying, hey, you need to look at the guy next to him. Because Snoop actually thought, hey, maybe it's plausible. Maybe Suge had something to do with it. Doesn't mean
that is
Snoop
the leaked
knows.
document.
Snoop
that's what we checked.
So Snoop is speculating based on all these circumstances at the time. Well, maybe Suge had something to do with it. Does that make it true? Do you build the foundation for a theory off of a comment by some rapper who has an opinion?
Craig, you're misconstruing the words. All of the evidence pointed towards Death Row Records, and this one thing was just one other document. But there were all kinds of things. What about Michael Moore listening to "Got 'Em" come over Reggie Wright's radio?
Let's give that to
what
Michael
is that?
Moore. Let's give him that. Let's say Michael Moore heard that. If I'm in the security detail and Tupac Shakur has just been in a fight with a Crip, and those Crips come back and shoot Tupac Shakur, I might get on my radio and say, hey, they got him, or got him, whatever. That's a completely natural and understandable comment to be heard on a radio. There's nothing weird about that. But see, what you try to do...
Something else comes over the radio next that says, don't say nothing over the radio. Yeah, I think so, Greg. I think you got this one wrong.
Yeah, you know why they didn't want anything said over the radio? Because Death Row intended to retaliate. Suge Knight looked directly across the car and saw P.Diddy. He knew the moment the shooting happened that it was the Southside Crips, and he knew he was going to handle it on the street. He knew he was not going to go to the cops. He knew he was not going to say, hey, you all need to cooperate with this investigation. That's not the way he rolled.
And here you're wrong again, Greg. I mean, here you're wrong again.
Where am I wrong, Mike?
Suge Knight verified that this information is true.
Oh, I see. So Suge Knight verified.
The 45. Are you going to let me talk?
I am.
I mean, you're so rude. I can't believe you're such a rude man.
I am. I know. So go ahead.
So just stop it, okay? I'm not.
Mike, just go ahead. Let's go on. Michael, I'm conceding. Go on.
Russell Poole and I put together 45 Tupac murder facts. We handed those to our contact at the DA's office. He was very interested in opening the cases. I sent a copy of that to Tom Mesereau. Tom Mesereau read it to Suge Knight in his cell, and he verified that it's true. And they called me to tell me that. So Suge Knight has verified that this is the truth behind what happened.
Is this the same Suge Knight who said that Tupac Shakur was still alive?
No, this is a very sober Suge Knight who's sitting.
Well, I think he was pretty sober when he made that comment. Is this the same Suge Knight who said that he believed Puffy Combs was behind the murder of Tupac Shakur? I mean, which Suge Knight should we believe? The one that helps him get out of jail in this particular situation? I can pull up 45 bullet points against the chaos merchant theory the same way that you can create 45 bullet points. You can raise questions all over the place. But when it comes down to an objective, factual evidence-based investigation, you guys are dead in the water. All you can do is speculate and draw together selective information to try to stay in this game. And that's what's ridiculous, Mike. And I get it, you're a conspiracy theorist. And maybe you even believe a lot of this. I sometimes question it, though. I honestly do, because you can't be a rational person and believe all this. But let's just say you do, that you're a conspiracy theorist and there's hundreds of people from all these agencies involved in this massive cover-up to what?
That's just
to
ridiculous,
get away with the
Greg.
murder? That's what. No,
That's
this
just
is
ridiculous.
Am I misrepresenting something?
You misrepresent everything, Greg.
Why don't you tell me what I just misrepresented?
You've made this sound like I think this goes all the way to Moscow, and that somehow Putin is behind this, and Putin's working with Obama, and they're all in cahoots on this. And that's not what it is.
I do believe you would go that far.
Hey, Greg, don't interrupt me. I'm sick of being interrupted by you. Stop it.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is about a record label that was worth $500 million, and they were trying to kill Suge Knight to take the record label from him. And when they couldn't kill him, they put him in prison, and they gutted the record label while he was in prison. And even still, because it was worth so much money, when he gets out of prison, there's still $23 million in the account, and in the bankruptcy, the thing sells for $26 million. So this thing was a very valuable commodity that they were trying to steal from Suge Knight, and they were trying to steal Tupac's 200 songs that he had in the vault. That's what this is. It's a theft, pure and simple.
Okay. Good. And so now we've got this theft by these insiders, and for you, that's Reggie Wright Jr. and Sharitha Knight. So now we have these death row insiders who set this whole thing
David
up.
Kenner.
And David Kenner, and now all of law enforcement, the FBI, the Las Vegas Police Department, the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, New Jersey PD, and I don't know who else, are all like complicit in covering it up. For who? For Reggie and Sharitha? Because we want to protect them for what reason?
One of the reasons that all of the investigations into death row records get derailed is because David Kenner's very smart, a criminal defense attorney, planning all this stuff, and he compromises those investigations. There were cops working at the El Rey Theater, so that investigation wasn't going to go anywhere. They knew who actually did the stomping. They had a list of names. They could have prosecuted, but they didn't prosecute because there were so many cops, there were witnesses, and so they didn't want to ruin cops' careers. And every single investigation is that way with death row records. They're very smart about how they did things. Why hire cops? Hey, Greg, think about the reason that you hire off-duty cops to be security. Is it really for protection? Is that cop going to really discharge his weapon to try and save you? I mean, maybe, but it's probably a career-ending move, isn't it? You tell me. You're a cop, or you were a cop.
Yeah, absolutely not. Off-duty cops work because they want the extra money. And depending on the integrity of that particular individual, he'll take one action or the other. Maybe he's compromised and he turns a blind eye to something. Maybe he's this very moral guy who says, no, I don't tolerate that. Cops are individuals. They come from different standards, whatever. But they work off-duty because they want to make extra money. A lot of the guys in the death row thing, well, they just like the environment. There's a lot of parties. There's a lot of girls. Hey, this is a great off-duty gig. It's perfect. And if something comes up, then they deal with it accordingly. So, yeah, are they potentially – hold on, Mike. Are they potentially compromised because of the environment they're working in? Sure. I'm not going to argue that. I think they saw a lot of things that they had no right being, or they were in positions that they had no right being in. No problem with that. And we won't. And you and I can agree on this one thing finally. But to somehow leap from, well, there's compromised cops, so they must have committed the murders. And that's where you fail, because there's no evidence whatsoever after all of this investigative effort to connect those dots. Not a single person can put a cop in the middle of all this. And at the same time that you can't put any cops in the middle of it, we have solid factual evidence pointing towards other people.
Why was Reggie Wright Sr. supervising Orlando Anderson's interrogation?
See, this is what's incredible. You guys are making this claim that Reggie Wright Jr. was, are we talking about in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Reggie Wright Sr. was not in Las Vegas. You guys take some photograph from a surveillance camera and then say, maybe that's Reggie Wright Sr. You don't do any due diligence. Did you go talk to Reggie Wright Sr. and ask him if he was in Las Vegas that night?
I'm going to steer clear of Reggie Wright Sr.
Oh, okay. Well, of course you are, because he's going to refute you. So you don't want anything to do with that. And that's the same thing with this whole confession letter. You don't go talk to any of the principals that are allegedly involved, because why? Because they're going to tell you something. They're going to tell you something different than what you want to hear. So what you'd rather do is just continue to promote your theory, because if you hear the truth, it'll refute you, and you don't want to deal with that. Reggie Wright Sr. was not in Las Vegas the night of Tupac Shakur's murder. And that photograph that you guys are identifying as Reggie Wright Sr. is not him. And
I disagree.
You guys, what do you mean you disagree? What evidence do you have?
There. And who was it that shakes Orlando's? Who is it that shakes Orlando's hand and gets him out of all that trouble? I mean, who is that? Isn't that Reggie Wright Jr.?
Give me a break.
Why is Reggie Wright Jr. going up and shaking Orlando's hand and getting him away from the investigators so that Orlando Anderson, can leave with him?
Michael.
Why does that happen? Who is
Michael,
that then?
This is funny. You first say it's Reggie Wright Jr. and then you ask the question.
I'm asking you. No,
it is not Reggie Wright Jr. Reggie Wright Jr. was not there at that scene of that fight. And so for you guys to just look at some grainy surveillance photograph and go, whoa, there's Reggie Wright Jr. Hey, that supports our theory. Let's say it's Reggie Wright Jr. It's not Reggie Wright Jr. And it's not Reggie Wright Sr. None of those guys were there, but you guys have no problem saying that they were. And that's where we have
those guys were there. I mean, we know for sure that Reggie Wright Sr. was in Vegas.
No, you don't. And that's just absolutely slanderous to say that. Reggie Wright Sr. was not in Vegas the night Tupac Shakur was killed. And for you guys to continue to allege this,
that's not what Death Row Dave said. Death Row Dave said that Reggie Wright Sr. was there.
Okay.
So
well, put him on the record. Put him on the record, and then we'll get Reggie Wright Sr. on the record, and then we'll compare the photographs of what Reggie Wright Sr. looked like at the time, because he was completely bald, and the person in your photograph has hair on the top of his head. And so you can completely eliminate your whole nonsense just by photographs of that time. And so
we looked at
you guys don't do any you guys do no due diligence. You simply
That's not true.
Well, you don't.
That's not true.
Who did you ever investigate? Who did you ever interview, Mike, in relation to Robert Suria's letter, other than Robert Suria himself?
I didn't interview anybody, but Russell Poole did, and R.J.
No,
Bond.
who did Russell Poole? Who did either of those guys interview?
You know what? I've got detailed notes on everything.
No, let me just ask you: who did Russell Poole or R.J. Bond or yourself interview in regard to the confession letter that you guys are basing your entire theory on? Name one person.
I'll tell you who I interviewed. I went and interviewed Chris Blanchford, and Chris Blanchford tells a completely different story than you do. And Chris Blanchford had 30. Are you interrupting me again?
I did. I'm sorry.
Chris Blanchford had 30 years at Fox News doing investigative journalism, and he was investigating people like Gene Giaquinto with the Mafia. He was investigating the Mexican cartels. And, I think he's got a pretty solid reputation. And what he said about this confession letter and what you say are completely different. And he says he talked to Malcolm and Danny Patton. So I think he didn't just get the confession letter. He actually had conversations with Malcolm Patton. And that's Chris Blanchford.
And he questioned them about the murder? and he questioned them about what's contained in the confession letter? No, you see, you're absolutely right, because you know damn good and well that when he met with him, he said that was the one thing they didn't discuss. And you know that because all you have to...
That's Danny, and that's when Danny came to the studio. But he actually spoke. He spoke to both of these guys on the phone at other times.
He didn't. Those weren't.
Yes, he did.
That's not who was. I know he's claiming that, he believes that, but that's not who was on the phone.
So you're saying that 30-year decorated journalist Chris Blatchford is a liar?
Nope, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's misinformed. I'm saying Chris Blatchford, who never went out and did any due diligence on this confession letter he gets. He never goes out.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say he did no due diligence. He did some. He was actually supposed to show up at an interview, and the gun was supposedly going to be dropped off, and
none of this happened. But
the gun didn't get refused.
At that point in time, Mike, he's communicating with Reggie Wright Jr. because they've been discussing certain things, because he's a gang investigative journalist, and so he knows Reggie Wright Jr. on a personal level. He never calls him up and asks him, hey, I've got this letter. I'm interested in these claims that are being made against you. He never reaches out to Sharitha. He never actually talks to Malcolm Patton. He believes he had, but somebody else was actually put on the line, part of Robert Saria's big charade. Danny Patton goes down and speaks with him because Danny Patton has been told that Chris Blatchford wants to do a gang expose and Danny Patton's going to get interviewed for it. He has no idea that Robert set him up for this interview, which is exactly why they never talk about the issue of Tupac Shakur. So the whole thing was this big charade by your schizophrenic child molesting source, and Chris Blatchford recognizes this whole thing stinks. He puts the letter in a drawer for 15 years, and then at some point says, hey, Russ, here, I got this letter a long time ago. Check it out. He did no due diligence. He never checked it out. We did all of that. We interviewed everybody. We went out and checked it out for you guys, and it absolutely falls apart. None of these people even really know each other. And don't you think that should have been done?
So that the letter is handed to the person who is close to the suspects in the case, so that he can tip them off. I mean, that's what happened.
I went out.
You obstructed justice, is what you did. I mean, and the LAPD should have been the ones investigating it. But your buddy was the one that got the letter, and he handed it to you so that it could be derailed, which is exactly what happened.
Oh, I see.
It should have been investigated.
Oh, okay. So Darren Dupree somehow controls everything in the LAPD. These 4 different people that are in this meeting, all who are completely capable of saying, let's pursue this. None of them do, by the way, whatsoever, because it's so damn ridiculous. They're not going to waste their time on it. But ultimately, Las Vegas PD is given a copy of the confession letter. They do absolutely nothing with it because they recognize how ridiculous the whole thing is. So law enforcement's not even going to bother with it. It's so stupid. You might as well say that it involves aliens.
Law enforcement,
so here's the thing.
Law enforcement wants nothing to do with these cases. The sheriffs want nothing to do with them. The LAPD wants nothing to do with them. And the Las Vegas police want nothing to do with these cases.
And the point is it because they're all part of a cover-up? Is that what it is, Mike? Nobody's doing anything. Is that the point you're trying to make? Is that it's all part of this very sophisticated, ongoing, enduring cover-up? That nobody's doing anything because they just want to, or do they just not give a shit?
I think they just, you know what? It could just be that they don't have the budget. I mean, it could be a lot of things, but they just don't want anything to do with these cases.
That's the most rational thing I've ever heard you say. That's the most rational thing I've ever heard you say. That's exactly what it is.
It all comes down to the money, Greg. And when LAPD was caught with their pants down with a whole Rampart scandal, that whole Rampart scandal should have been a lot bigger than it was. The feds came in, they negotiated a deal to try and cap it off and minimize the embarrassment as much as they can. It was still pretty embarrassing. And, consent decree, big changes at LAPD, all kinds of things. But we all know that it was a much more far-reaching problem of the corruption inside of LAPD at the time. And a good source for that is are you interrupting again? A good source for that is Connie Rice. and you may want to talk to her because she talked about the Rampart police corruption and how much more widespread it was than what actually ended up in that Rampart report, which was extremely watered down.
Okay. And so the federal oversight of the Rampart investigation, they're all in collusion. They're all saying, "Hey, man, we're all buddies here. Let's cover up for the LAPD." Is that
I wouldn't say
position?
it's we're all buddies here. I mean, I don't know how all that shook down, but it's reasonable to think though that, you know, obviously they got what they wanted politically. The LAPD got embarrassed. There was a consent decree. They had a little bit more control over things, and maybe that was enough. Maybe they didn't want to, you know, expose further corruption.
Oh, okay. So the FBI, who has an entire public corruption unit, whose sole objective is to expose public corruption, is saying, well, let's not do that in this case. We don't want to embarrass anybody.
You don't think they pick and choose what cases they get involved in and which ones are politically hot potatoes and which ones, I mean, you know, they don't go after every single person. They also have budgets. And, you know, you can't catch every speeder.
Hey,
you think,
Mike.
Are you interrupting again?
No. Let me just add this real quick.
Can you catch
you're going off
every
on
speeder?
speeders and stuff like that.
No,
okay.
But can you catch every speeder? You can't catch every speeder. So you think you can catch every person that commits a robbery, every person that commits, a break-in of a storage locker or whatever? It's impossible.
Okay, crimes go unsolved. Point made. Okay, interesting. Now here's an illustration. Well, I don't know. The FBI investigated a corrupt sheriff down in Orange County and put him in prison. The FBI investigated a corrupt sheriff in Los Angeles and put him in indicted him and is going to sentence him. So they investigate local police departments and they do a pretty damn good job of getting to the bottom of things, and they have no problem indicting figureheads from police departments. So I guess when these guys have not done anything that equates to murder, that they're involved in some kind of, you know, backdoor deals, some, you know, kind of white-collar corruption, the FBI will go all the way to prosecute them, but they're going to turn a blind eye to the department that is covering up murders, right? Is that the rationale here?
Well, I think the rationale is that, you know, there's all kinds of reasons why all kinds of people do all kinds of things, and understanding every single person's motivation is just not possible. And, you know, I don't understand why they haven't pursued this. If you have all this evidence against Puffy Combs, you know, why not get him indicted? Why just try and besmirch his reputation? I mean,
okay, so can I explain to you from a law enforcement perspective why? I'll give you a very rational explanation from somebody who comes from within the judicial system. I mean, I think I'm in a much better position to explain why than maybe you are as to speculate why.
Okay, I'd love to hear this.
Okay, so at the point that we get this very compelling information, this critical evidence from these co-conspirators who involved themselves directly in these murders, other co-conspirators that are necessary to corroborate them have died, right? And so now we've got a situation where we have an icon like Puffy Combs with millions and millions of dollars capable of bringing an A-team of lawyers to court, and we're going to put as our star witness on the stand a convicted drug-dealing gang member like P.Diddy and say, hey, jury, this is a case we have. This guy here in the witness box is claiming he had a conversation in which Puffy Combs solicited the murder. Yeah, we can prove all these circumstantial things about Puffy using his crew to do security. We can show all the history of violence between these crews. But ultimately, when it comes down to the claim of a murder, we have this witness who's a drug-dealing gang member who has previously said he wasn't involved, now saying he was. Do you think any DA in the world is going to say, yeah, that's a case I want to take to court? I'd sure like to hang my hat on that prosecution. That's not the way it works. Let me explain real quick, Mike. Within the district attorney's office, when they're evaluating whether or not to prosecute a case, this is how it works. The district attorneys evaluates the winnability of a case before they determine whether to file charges. And they look at all of the evidence that they can bring to court. And they say, wow, we don't have a high probability of winning. Let's not pursue this at this time. And that's where we're at. Unfortunately, all the co-conspirators are dead. We have the testimony of a guy who on the stand, his credibility is going to come into question. All to what? To point a finger at an icon in the music business worth millions of dollars. It's just not a practical thing to do.
And so instead, you just, because you don't have sufficient evidence to prosecute, you come out and slander.
No, I don't think so at all. I think the public has an absolute right to know, because we have factual, corroborative evidence, we can go out and make these claims. It's very different than the claims that you guys make with no evidence, no factual foundation.
Tons of evidence. Lots of factual foundation.
Name an eyewitness who says Reggie Wright Jr. killed Tupac Shakur. Name an eyewitness that says Sharitha Knight had something to do with Tupac Shakur. You don't have that, because your whole
foundation. Right now. I'll give you one eyewitness. Suge Knight.
There's a real okay. And so Suge Knight is going to claim that
it works for you with P.Diddy, but when it's Suge Knight, all of a sudden it's like we can't use Suge Knight because Suge Knight's got the same problems as P.Diddy. I mean, I don't understand the difference here.
I'll explain the difference. The difference is that when P.Diddy tells us this, we then go out and corroborate his claims.
This was a proper deal?
It was a proper deal.
And so you recorded a proper deal?
It was recorded. I didn't record it, but it was recorded.
Which is a violation of his Fifth Amendment rights, kind of a scumbag move on somebody's part.
Okay, well, then he can take that up with the courts, whatever. It was recorded, regardless of whether you appreciate it or not. It was recorded, and thank God it was. So we recorded a proffer deal, and we have him on tape confessing to his involvement in the murders. And we go out and we look at all the details of what he's claiming, and we corroborate them, and we start to realize, okay, well, this is the most plausible, empirically established explanation for these murders.
And in 2
which
hours
is very
and 20
different.
Minutes, those guys could actually get all the way across town and find Tupac and know the car he was going to be in.
Oh, I see. Okay, so and you're proposing what? That they didn't find him?
No, I'm proposing that it would have been very, very highly implausible that this could have happened. Highly implausible that Orlando Anderson could have actually pulled himself together to go shoot somebody. And then it's also implausible because between the time Orlando Anderson is beaten and the time Tupac is shot, Corey Edwards sees Orlando Anderson in the bar. So how is it possible Orlando Anderson could be in two places at one time? It's not.
Well, he wasn't.
And your
they
whole theory evaporates.
No, it doesn't, because Corey Edwards was with Orlando Anderson at the 662. They were all together.
Yeah, after
so it doesn't
the bar.
Evaporate at all.
And I don't think Orlando Anderson went to 662. I don't think that's right.
Based on what?
What are you basing it on? Because after the bar, Orlando Anderson said he went to his room. He wasn't feeling well. He'd just taken a beating.
Okay. So Orlando Anderson says that he went and, he didn't go murder anybody. So, okay, that's a self-serving statement. But, okay, let's give it to him. Hold on.
There's videotape evidence all over Vegas. It's eye in the sky. And, when... What do you mean, You've never heard that there's video cameras everywhere in Vegas? And that's like news to you?
So this has all been captured. all of this has been captured on videotape and somehow it's been suppressed by those who have the videotape?
Oh, it wasn't suppressed. It's being held by the Las Vegas Police Department. They had no interest in Orlando Anderson as a suspect because they knew for a fact that he was not the shooter.
Oh, so they drove all the way to Compton when Orlando Anderson was detained. They come to Compton and attempt to question him, that he lawyers up, but that's because they don't want to pursue him? Is that your
No.
Is that your logic?
It's not the logic. It's what Brent Becker said. He said they had no interest in Orlando Anderson. They came to Compton because there was the big gang sweep that was happening, and they wanted to see what could be netted from it. And
okay, so if Orlando Anderson's not involved and it's not the Southside Crips, what the hell does Vegas have an interest in a gang sweep in Compton?
Because maybe they could find clues about the case. They weren't just going
clues about
to
the case. If there's no Southside Crip Orlando Anderson component to it, then what clues are they hoping to get out of some random search warrants in Compton?
Yeah, they wanted to get clues about the case. They wanted to come down. They were invited down by Compton to participate in this whole thing, and Compton offers up Orlando Anderson, and they said, "Hey, we're not interested. We don't want to arrest him. We don't want to take him back to Vegas." That's what Brent Becker said.
Okay, so Brent Becker said that.
Is Brent Becker a liar now?
No, I think you're just absolutely misrepresenting what he said. And you're also misrepresenting the situation. What actually happened was Las Vegas PD found out that there's potentially these guys from Compton involved in the murder. They have a videotape of a guy, and they don't know who it is, this guy in a jersey who has just gotten his ass kicked by Tupac and the crew. And so they don't know who it is. They hear word that, oh, okay, this guy might be from Compton. So they ask a guy named Tim Brennan, who has a deep background with gangs in Compton, can you look at this videotape and tell us if you know anybody? Tim Brennan says, why, as a matter of fact, I do. That's Orlando Anderson. He's a Southside Crip.
So wait
That's
a minute.
the name of the guy you're looking for.
He's looking at the same video that we look at, and we see Reggie Wright Sr. and Reggie Wright Jr., and now he's able to identify Orlando Anderson. I mean, you can't have it both ways, Greg.
Well, sure I can, because you guys are wrong and he's right. He knows Orlando Anderson. He's a police expert in gangs, and he can identify somebody on a tape, especially when that person's image is very clear and consistent throughout the tape. So it's very it's very obvious that a guy like Tim Brennan can look at a picture like that and say, hey, that's Orlando Anderson. But what isn't cool is when you guys take some image without any real foundation and go, wow, that's Reggie Wright Sr. or that's Reggie Wright Jr., even though they were nowhere near the scene.
And Russell Poole sent that image to 4 or 5 of his cop buddies that all know Reggie Wright Sr., and they all said, that's him. So
okay.
I don't know, man. I think you can't have it both ways. Orlando Anderson gets fingered by Tim Brennan, and that's cool on the same tape, but when we say, hey, that's Reggie Wright Sr., and we have other people verify it, that's not cool.
Well,
I mean,
when you have those other people step forward and go on the record publicly and say, hi, I'm a friend of Reggie Wright Sr.'s, and I'm telling you this is him, then we can believe you. But when you make these allusions or these claims to these mysterious, unidentified people and saying they support, it's an argument that of silence, really. And so,
unfortunately,
it's a completely different thing than having Tim Brennan look at a guy that he recognizes and knows because he's had encounters with him and go, that's Orlando. So to make these accusations against Reggie Jr. and Reggie Sr. when they're clearly don't even they don't even look like the individuals that you're claiming, it's not cool, dude. It's really not.
Well, and unfortunately, Russell is no longer with us, so who he verified that with, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I've showed this to other people down in Compton, and they've also verified, and I want to leave those sources alone for now because I've got ongoing conversations.
Well, let me interject for a minute here, fellas. say it's been one hell of a show. I think this has been the most educational, and I mean, it's been crazy. You guys have really gone back and forth about your investigations, Russell's investigations. I just want to say thank you to Michael Carlin for calling in. I appreciate you. I also want to say thank you, Greg, for calling in, and thank the two of you for not killing each other. You guys.
Well, we're obviously both very passionate.
He's the one that carries the gun.
Obviously. Well, here's the question I have for the both of you. Okay, now you guys both have books out. You both have theories and whatnot. Can you guys ever come in the middle and meet eye to eye on some of these things? Can you either prove or disprove each other's stuff? Kind of like what you're doing here tonight. Would you guys be willing to meet and actually discuss various things?
Well, I would certainly be open to any kind of public debate, and I'll bring, our evidence is already on the table. You can watch the documentary, look at it and see whether or not it makes sense to you. You can look at what they produce, see if it makes sense to you. So, the debate is already out there to be had. You can look at what we're producing and claiming and then draw a conclusion as to what is the most reasonable and rational. That's already there. I'm always open to public debate. I'm very passionate about this. I think truth is important. I also think that protecting people who are being falsely accused is equally important. And I think that what they're doing is completely reckless and irresponsible because these individuals have private lives and they're having allegations made against them with absolutely no evidence.
And I would say the exact same thing to Greg Kading. Chaos Merchants has every single source, every single footnote documented of where the information comes from. So saying that there's no basis for any of our claims is absolutely false. And I would say the exact same thing to Greg Kading. Accusing Sean Puffy Combs of having any part in this murder, I think, is reckless on your part, and you're putting an innocent life in danger. And because nobody really likes Sean Puffy Combs, he's the bad boy that everybody likes to hate, you're able to get away with it. And you're doing what you're accusing us of doing, and I think it is bad. I think we have the truth on our side, and I think if you just read Chaos Merchants, and if you read Tupac 187, in Tupac 187, we refute murder rap completely. R.J. Bond did a great job of destroying murder rap in Tupac 187.
Okay.
It's almost like the ghosts of Biggie and Pac are fighting right here tonight. I mean, you guys are really, it's been a battle royal of authors and investigators. Hell of a show again, guys. I would love to invite you guys on again in the future. Maybe we can do this with, one of my co-hosts, Six, told me maybe we can do this with some of Pac and Biggie's people. Maybe we can get some of the associates that they worked with or that they've known over the years, and we can all sit down and do a massive roundtable on this whole situation. And if you guys are down for that, of course. Thank you for coming on the show tonight. Would you be down for that, Michael?
You know what? Let's depending on timing and what have you, I do travel quite a bit.
Yeah. Obviously, Greg, I'm sure you would be a part of that. But right now,
anytime, anywhere.
It's 20 years since this took place, and people want answers. Because all these theories running around that Tupac is alive and this and that, that's hogwash. Everybody knows he's dead, unfortunately. People want answers. They definitely want answers. I commend you guys for doing what you do. Thank you guys both for coming on the show tonight. Thank you for calling in, Greg, and thank you for being my guest tonight, Michael. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we will catch up with you guys again soon in the future. Go out and get the book, Tupac 187. Also check out Murder Rap, and you decide for yourself. You decide who won the presidential debate tonight here. I mean, Jesus Christ, you guys really I mean, it was like Trump versus Cruz over here, I'm telling you. Hell of a show. I appreciate it. Once again, thank you both, and you have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Check us out tomorrow night, KFYB comedy show with Velvet Rose, Six, and Mac J. Then, of course, Church Reality on Sunday. Same time, same place, ugsforlife.com. Thank you, fellas. Thank you, everyone, tuning in. You guys have a wonderful evening. I'm out this motherfucker.
Good night, my friend.
Okay, this is the time, and your local Ford dealer is definitely the place. Why? Because this is Ford Truck Month, folks, where you can save big time on Ford F-Series, the #1 selling trucks in America for 39 years straight.
Let me hear you say truck, yeah, let's crank it on up, yeah.
Ford F-150 and Super Duty, making every other truck brand history. This is the time, and this is Ford Truck Month. See your local Ford dealer today.